of the presentation is breaking barriers, how women and educators can help shape the future of Myanmar's displaced youth. And as you can see, my name is Isabella Aung, and I'm currently a research fellow at the University of Toronto. I'm also doing research fellowships with other universities across Canada and the United Kingdom as well. Let's see. So, because we are talking about educators, I would like to share my profile as an educator when I started becoming Siyama to the youths, and then how things fell into place, and I started teaching the youth in Myanmar post-coup. So, a little bit about my education background. I am starting a Doctor of Law program this September. I have completed PhD coursework in comparative politics and women in politics. And I also have a master's degree in political science with an honors undergraduate degree in international relations and mathematics. And I have been teaching youth since 2015. I would like to tell you how I started. I started by teaching Syrian refugees in England. I don't know if anyone remember around 2015, 2015လောက်မှာဆိုရင်အာ Syria စစ်ပွဲရဲ့ peak time เนาะအရန်လူတွေအများကြီးက Europe တခွင်ကို refugee အနေနဲ့ရောက်သွားကြတယ်အဲ့ဒီအချိန်မှာကျမကလည်းအင်္ဂလန်မှာပညာတော်သင်သွားနေတဲ့အချိန်ဖြစ်တဲ့အခါအဲ့ဒီရောက်လာတဲ့လူတွေအများကြီးတဲ့လူငယ်တွေကိုကြည့်ပြီးတော့အရွယ်ကလည်းအဲ့တုန်းကတော့တိတ်မကွာဘူးပေါ့နော်အခုကတော့ကြီးပြီပေါ့အဲ့တုန်းကကြည့်ပြီးတော့ဟဲငါကြတော့ I was studying in peace. I was also an immigrant in the UK because I'm originally from the States. ငါကြတော့စာသင်နေတယ်ငါထက်နည်းနည်းပဲငယ်တဲ့လူတွေကြတော့ဘာဖြစ်လို့ church ထဲမှာပဲစာလည်းမသင်ရဘူးဘာသာစကားလည်းမသိဘူးတခြားလူတွေ discriminate လုပ်တာခံနေရတယ် they have no opportunities to education. So this is when I started teaching the youth. I started by teaching Syrian refugees in England. And then after I came back to the United States from the UK after my study abroad for 6 months, back home at Linfield University in Oregon, I tutor academic and research writing to both domestic, so American students, and international students who came from different countries to the university. And after I graduated from undergrad, I did my master's and my PhD coursework. And I started teaching political science undergraduate courses at Canadian universities from 2017 to 2023. And I also supervised undergraduate research for a defense research think tank in Ottawa for 2 years. And when I was teaching in Canada, supervising research, of course, unfortunately, the coup happened in February 2021. And I started living with this weight. Every day I would go into the class in Canadian universities and teach the young people in Canada. I thought for 2021, 2022, what am I doing? You know, I'm teaching these students. မကောင်းတာမဟုတ်ဘူးเนาะဆရာမအနေနဲ့တက္ကသိုလ်မှာစတင်တယ်ကနေဒါကလေးတွေကိုစတင်တယ်ဒါပေမဲ့နေ့တိုင်းခုဖြစ်ပြီးကတည်းကကျမရဲ့စိတ်ထဲမှာဆိုရင်ဒီကလေးတွေနဲ့ကျမတို့နိုင်ငံကကလေးတွေနဲ့ရွယ်တူပဲဉာဏ်ပညာတော်တာချင်းလည်းတူတယ် but ကျမတို့နိုင်ငံကကလေးတွေအသက်ခံနေရတယ်တောထဲရောက်နေတယ်ပညာသင်ခွင့်မရှိကြဘူး I keep thinking about it all the time and it started to weigh really heavy to me so I stopped focusing solely on the Canadian students. Of course, I still continue to teach them. I still continue to supervise them in their research capacity. But I started thinking about how I can contribute to the youth in my parents' country, in a country where I was born and raised as raised for part of my childhood. So in 2023, I got connected with a friend from Spring University, Myanmar, and I started advising as a volunteer academic advisor at Spring University, Myanmar. And then one thing led to another. And in January 2024, I founded and I served as the head of diploma for the comparative politics program for 2 years. Again, I already talked about it briefly. Being an immigrant is hard. Being displaced is really hard. I really empathize with the Myanmar youth who are displaced not only internally within the country, but also who are forced to flee to the neighboring countries especially those without sufficient language skills, because it really parallels my memory, what I had of Syrian refugees when I was teaching them. Now that I look at our own youth being displaced in Thailand, India, neighboring countries, and beyond, and facing a lot of difficulties assessing education opportunities. So again, back in 2015, I saw hundreds and hundreds of newly arrived Syrian refugees, and a lot of them are young people, young men particularly. They were resettled in a church in Nottingham, where I was studying. And then there were 200 people in the church hall. They were sleeping next to each other. They were in line. They didn't speak the language. They didn't know the environment. They couldn't find a job. It was really difficult for them, no opportunities. Um, they had poor living conditions. They were relying on very sparse funding because, unfortunately, Islamophobia and racism discrimination were also a thing. And I realized that education can offer them an opportunity to get their foot in the door in their new host country. So I led weekly English conversation sessions from September 2015 to January 2016, taught them the language. But in addition, I also talked to them about the cultural traditions and ways they can succeed and access opportunities in their new host country, which was the United Kingdom. And my work with the Syrian refugees for 6 months really ignited my passion for teaching. I found that experience very rewarding. And like I said before, when I started connecting with Spring University, Myanmar, I have been teaching university courses in Canada for 6 years already. I started volunteering as a counselor in 2023, and I met a lot of students who came to me usually just to open up how things have abruptly changed for them, particularly for the CDM students, how they lost all the opportunity for higher education. They do not want to go back under the military control system, but then their names are on the list for surveillance, arrest, so they cannot really access any education. And in a lot of cases, private education, the prices just went up a lot. So even when you wanted to enroll in private education, you cannot afford to. So through my many conversations with these students who are displaced, I identify a gap in comparative political education. After the coup, there was increasing demand by the youth in Myanmar to understand different types of political institutions and systems, but we had some political science courses which were far and few in between, and but they were also leaning a lot more theoretical. They will teach you about the foundational theory, they will ask you to read things, but these courses, most of them did not ask you to think critically, think outside the box, or they didn't even teach how to compare different political systems, different type of leadership system. So this limited the students' opportunity to conduct comparative political analysis, which they really wanted to do through, and I found this out through talking to dozens of students in my advising sessions. So that is why I wanted to address this gap. I designed and founded the Comparative Politics Diploma Program. The hosting school is at Spring University Myanmar Institute of Human Rights and Democratic Development Governance, called IHRDG. I collaborated with my friend and colleague, Dr. Mola. He was the former director of IHRDG, and we really wanted to ensure the highest quality of programming. Just because we are a school that leans a little bit more not for profit that accepted displaced students. We didn't want to cheap out on the quality. I find it really disgusting when people are like, "Oh, you're just teaching refugee." No, I did not like that. They are displaced against their will. They didn't want to be in this situation. So, as an educator myself, if I wanted to offer them something, I wanted to offer them the same, if not better, type of opportunities that I create for my Canadian students here. And I also really emphasize in my CBDB program to hire CDM students and educators. Some CDM students, they were doing master's, PhD at the universities in Myanmar. Some of them, they were just a few months before graduation, right? So they already are experienced emerging scholars. So in order to get them involved in this program, I really focus on hiring them as much as possible as teaching assistants and also CDM professors and educators. I wanted them to come and work with us as lecturers, and they are all paid. Like-minded scholars within the Myanmar diaspora also became the supporters of the CBDB program in different ways. Over the 2 years that this program has been in existence, we have had lecturers, tutors, advisors, guest speakers, and mentors, so much more, who came from the broader Myanmar diaspora living and being established in different countries across the world. And I personally In addition to managing the diploma program as a founder and the head, I also taught three core courses. One is social science inquiry. It is a more advanced undergraduate course. I have taken a similar course in my final year when I was doing my thesis for my undergraduate. This taught the youth in my program how to conduct research in social science, quantitative, qualitative, mixed methods. But then I also wanted them because my student demographic is quite mixed, right? Some are still undergraduate students, but some of them they were doctors already, they were engineers already. They just wanted to repivot their academic journey. So I also wanted something more of a postgraduate, master's, somewhat PhD level courses for them as well. So everyone has something that they enjoy. And for the younger students, this is such a nice challenge to try to keep up and improve your knowledge in a more immersion style. ကလေးတွေစာတော့အများကြီးဖတ်ရတယ် They were not used to it because academic articles they were 20, 25 pages for one, and at the beginning they were like, Siama, reading was too much. But by the time we hit the middle of the program, they were getting used to it. They really enjoyed it and they really appreciated the opportunity to share their thoughts and reflections with students in the class. So the two postgraduate courses I delivered were social movements and politics of ethnic conflict. So these are some notable achievements, not by me, but by our students. Within the short time that we deliver this program, three of our graduates got accepted into master's program in political studies and international relations and adjacent fields. So they are now doing their masters. And one graduate, a younger alumni, they joined the Permi University to pursue a four-year undergraduate degree. And three of our graduates after the first cohort, they were rehired as teaching assistant as the CBDP because their academic performance was just excellent and they fit in really well with the working environment at Spring University, Myanmar. And quite several of our students published their work with T-Celco Myanmar, which is a publication outlet based at the University of Toronto. And one of our teaching assistants, she might or might not be in the audience, and presented at an international conference at the University of Indonesia, fully funded. And of course, we had guest speakers and educators from Yale University, Queen's University, University of Sydney, University of Melbourne, and University of Massachusetts. Just through a lot of networking, I personally talked to a lot of my colleagues in different universities. Hey, I'm doing this for our youth. Like, do you want to participate? What can I do so that you can participate? I would just talk to them again and again until they realize that, well, this is an opportunity to actually connect with the youth who are on the front lines, who are at ground zero, and who really need education. So they all agree, and that's how it snowballed and happened. We even got a deputy minister to do a participation presentation and Q&A session with our students. So this is a background about CBDP and my educator profile. Now we wanted to get to the content. How as educators, what approaches we can use to effectively support our displaced young people in their journey to pursue higher education. So a little bit of a snapshot. In post-coup Myanmar, the class gap, the income gap in the education sector has been growing exponentially. So if you look right now, ပတ်စံရှိတဲ့လူတွေပဲကျောင်းတခြားတက်နိုင်တယ် They can go to private schools, they can study abroad, everything's easier for them. And for the young people who boycott the military education systems, and if particularly if they are not rich, if they do not come from money, opportunities are disappearing right in front of their eyes. And compounding this issue are multiple factors such as geographic location, the level of political violence they face in their daily life, and the conscription law, the urban-rural divide, တောမှာနေတယ်မြို့မှာနေတယ်အခွင့်အရေးကမတူပါဘူး and language barriers. This is not an exhaustive list of barriers that our youth face. These are just some examples. And I wanted you to think about intersectionality. This term was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, a Black feminist scholar. Intersectionality is a lens through which you can see where power comes and collides, where it interlocks and intersects. It is not simply that there is a race problem here, a gender problem here, and a class or LGBT problem there. Many times the framework erases what happens to people who are subject to all of these things. So Our first interactive exercise, don't be scared. It is, I do not grade anything. I do not judge. am just really happy to hear your feedback. I know that a lot of you, if not all of you in the audience, are educators. So I want to see how you practice these concepts in real life as well. So I want you to do a 2-minute quiet reflection. Write down, or maybe just think in your mind, 5 to 10 of your identities, different identities that you hold, and or aspects of your life that have affected your higher education journey. And I want you to think how each of these has affected your education journey. So I would give you an example. Personally, I wrote down 10. You can just do five. Financial aid. I moved from Myanmar to the United States as a child. And of course, my parents were professionals. My mom was a pharmacist. My dad, he was a small business owner in Myanmar. So we were solely middle class. But when we moved abroad, you cannot use a pharmacist degree or a license from Myanmar in the US. That just does not happen. And we did not have the money for my mom to go back to school because she had two kids. So we became low income. We became low income when we moved to the States. It is nothing to be ashamed of. A lot of professionals in Myanmar, when they move abroad, unfortunately, because of the credential issues, they have to pursue other jobs outside of their professions. So in my case, I got a lot of financial aid. I got a lot of scholarships when I went to undergraduate, master's, and PhD coursework. So without financial aid, I would not be here. It would not have been possible for me to pursue higher education. And also language fluency. I speak English the most fluently, but I also speak Burmese, Myanmar loပြောတယ်, and I also speak French. So this opens up more opportunity for me, and I'm privileged, particularly in Canada. I didn't even know much about Canada before I moved here from the United States. I was just taking French classes back in the US because I enjoyed it and I had some time in university. But after I moved, I learned that Canada is bilingual. Canada has two official languages, English and French. ပြင်သစ်လို့ပြောတတ်ရင် you get more opportunities. This is what I luckily found out. So my language fluency has positively affected my education journey as well. Ethnic background is really tricky because if you think about it, yes, I'm originally from Myanmar, but my mother is from Moon-Nagaran backgrounds. But if you ask me, "Kiin lo biao da la, Moon lo biao da la," just a little. I know some words, but that's pretty much it. This could be a barrier for me because when I started conducting research with women who are at the front lines, they know my ethnic background and they want to talk to me in their native language, but I'm really bad at it. I cannot speak at all. So, it kind of affects their trust level, or it kind of affects their comfort level.မြန်မာလိုပဲပြောရမှာလား English လိုပိုပြောချင်တယ် particularly in our Christian ethnic minorities, if I cannot speak in their language, they would prefer to do interviews, work with me in English compared to Burmese. So, right? My ethnic background and the languages I speak sometimes can positively, sometimes can negatively affect my journey to higher education. Of course, safety, professional network, caretaking responsibilities. If you are a young mother or if you are taking care of your elderly relatives, it might have some negative effects on your education journey, political instability, immigration status, so on and so forth. So I'll give you a minute or two to think about which areas of your life, which of your identities have affected your education journey, and if you're an educator, affected your teaching. And then you can just unmute whenever you're ready, and then you can share an example with us.မြန်မာလိုပြောလဲရတယ် In English is also okay. I would prefer if you can share one identity that has positive impact and one identity that might have negative impact. Anyone want to volunteer? Perfect. Ken, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me the chance to reflect myself. I think one entity that I want to share is the financial insecurity. I think it is really a fit for my education because when I was attending as a day student at the Yale University, at the time I feel that I was struggling with my own intent to continue my story. So I have to walk three as the guide, three education center as a guide to continue my story. But the military coup, I mean, decided to participate. That's why I have no degree, right now. But I think that is negatively that I lost everything that at the time feel downhearted and maybe how can I say that? So this is really affect me, and some days, some nights, couldn't sleep because thinking about this because of mine. So I identity and because of my promise that I can come back to the to the to continue my education. So at the time, deciding to search on the new opportunity. So at the time, I want to apply, and maybe this I want to go. I want to go to abroad, especially Japan. Thailand. But my family financially, so we are at the lower than middle class, and that's why that we are struggling again and again. And my family couldn't support financially. That's why I want to. So I always search a new opportunity to continue my study. So at the time, so I got the opportunity to start organization by applying scholarships or so more and more. Even when I least firstly, I think that it is a I think one of the best things that I have because financial insecurity is one of the big problems for the career, especially in this expensive society. At best, consequently, and also fortunately, I found my ways by applying scholarships, by filling my so maybe speaking skill and also writing skill and other languages. I learned most. I think that most of the learnings are free from the class. Like some of the teachers share their experience and also some of the free class and some of the free education center. I always searching it and learning from day by day. That's why I did that. I feel like I'm improved more and more and getting opportunity day by day. I think that's why I think the how can I say the difficulty is just the difficulty, but we can face the difficulties that overcoming. We can get this limitless amount of opportunity we got. I think that is the reflection from my experience. So that's why I always teach my students that difficulty and also insecurity and also unfulfillment that is a kind of barrier. So if we can overcome it, I think everything is I think meaningful and successful and also very beautiful chance of waiting for us. And that is my reflection. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing. This is really powerful. Now, in his answer, Ken said that financial difficulties serve as a deterrent, cause negative consequences at the beginning, but he can also turn this financial difficulty as a stepping stone and make a positive impact in your journey. Okay, thank you for sharing again. Let's move on to the next slide. So we have a little bit of a discussion here. I will give you three examples. And example one is we have a Rohingya student from Cox's Bazar with limited Burmese language skills. Imagine that these students are in your class. How would you help them? Example two, you also have a CDM student originally from Rangoon, but they are now a PDF member living in Zagai. And example three, you have a Korean student forcibly displaced to Thailand and who cannot pursue higher education in Thailand because of a lack of documentation. What are some intersecting aspects of each student life that might affect their access to higher education opportunities? So you can just say, for example, financial difficulties, but what are some other areas of their lives? သူတို့ရဲ့ဘဝရဲ့တခြားဘယ် identity တွေ background တွေကသူတို့ရဲ့ပညာရေးကိုအာနှောင့်နှေးကြန့်ကြာစေနိုင်လဲဆိုတာအာဆရာဆရာမတွေအနေနဲ့ point out identify လုပ်စေချင်ပါတယ် You can just unmute yourself and then just say for example um ပတ်စံလို့တယ် or something something Okay, I will take three answers really. Ooh, how do I go back? Really quickly. Anyone wants to answer? Just really quickly, you can just name the aspect of their life that might affect their education journey. I might just call some people randomly. Okay, Jaws and Let, go ahead.
Thank you, teachers. I think the image presents the three distinct student profiles: a Rohingya student in Cox's a CDM student or PDS member in Sagaing, and a displaced Korean student in Thailand. Explore the interesting aspects of their life that affects their access to higher educations. To analyze this effectively, we can look at how their identity and external circumstances overlap through the lens of intersectionality, I think. First factor is the most important factor is the legal status and documentations. This is the primary barriers for all three. Whether it is lack of citizenship, for example, political blacklisting for Rohingyas, or refugee status without papers for current ethnics, and the absence of recognized ID or transcripts made for formal enrollments in university nearly impossible, I think. Second factor is language barriers. The Rohingya students faces a linguistic device, for example, limited Burmese, while the Korean students in Thailand likely faces Thai language barriers. Language isn't just a communication tool; it's a gatekeeper for standardized entrance exams and curriculum comprehension, I think. That leads geographies instabilities. Displacement is the common threat. Being forcibly displaced or living in an ethnic conflict zones, or for example, Sakai, means these students lack the physical safety and stable internet or infrastructures required for consistent story, I think. Fourthly, political and how can I say, or security risk. For the student in Zagai, their active involvement in a political movement makes them a target. Their identity as a CDM student create barriers where traditional state-run education began a site of danger rather than opportunity, I think, in Myanmar.
Thank you.
Finally,
Yeah, go
economic,
ahead.
yes. Economic vulnerability, I think, displacement almost always lead to a loss of family livelihood. Without the ability to work legally, especially in refugee camps or foreign countries. How can I say that? All the cost of tuitions, books, and even basic devices for online learning is often extra amount uh, how can I say that, insufficient to afford uh, to improve their learning process, I think. This is my discussion, teacher. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a really thoughtful and comprehensive answer, and you just apply the concept of intersectionality in your thought process. So I really appreciate that. And in the chat as well, I just noticed the chat. People said citizenship issues, no passport, no NRC card, economic hardship, limitation of traveling. Thank you again, Joe, for your contribution. A lot of the things that Joel said are listed here in the different various like ethnicity, religion, internet access, electricity, Burmese fluency, English fluency. If you're moving to Thailand, Thai fluency, income, family responsibility, could be financial. You are responsible for making money for the family. But for some people, particularly, this affect women more. Caretaking, are you taking care of elderly? Are you taking care of people with disabilities? Are you taking care of children? And then air raid, some of a lot of people, millions are displaced, but people in certain areas faces air raid bombing a lot more than other people that might be destructive to their class time and commitment to education. Like people said in the chat, NRC, transcript, passport, and the extent and scope of displacement. The list of the barrier goes on and on. So how can educators meet our youths where they are despite all these barriers and challenges to provide them with higher education and good quality education? So we have some initial considerations. Each young person, as we know, has unique factors influencing their access to higher education. And as educators, we have to consider how to support each student to reach their full potential. However, on the flip side of the coin, structural restraints are deterring educators from customizing their approach for every student. So what is important is that we need to strike a balance between individual and community-based delivery approaches so that we can help as many students as possible to reach their full potential. And I personally wanted to share what I do in programming when I teach the displaced youth in Myanmar. I have 5 core values as an educator delivering courses to displaced student young people from Myanmar. Accessibility, accountability, EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion, mentorship, and reflexivity. And now let's go into each one of them. First, I always think about accessibility. You need to ensure that your program, initiative, education delivery is accessible to young people from different backgrounds. ဘယ်နေရာကလာတဲ့လူငယ်ဖြစ်ဖြစ် displaced youth ဟာဆိုရင်ကျမတို့သင်တဲ့ course တွေကိုလက်လှမ်းမိနိုင်ရမယ်တက်နိုင်ရမယ်ဈေးရန်ကြီးနေတာဘာသာစကားအမြဲတမ်းခက်ခဲနေတာ barrier တစ်ခုအမြဲတမ်းရှိနေတဲ့ program ဆိုရင်ကိုကအဲ့ program ကိုမပြုတ်ပြမဲနဲ့ဆက်ပြီးတော့မသွားသင့်ဘူး This is my personal opinion as an educator so accessibility can look like ဘယ်လိုမျိုးလူတိုင်းလက်လှမ်းမိအောင်လုပ်ပေးနိုင်မလဲ For CPDP, I personally did free admissions, no application fees. ပတ်စံအရင်ခက်ခဲနေတယ်ဒီကလေးတွေစီကဘာကိစ္စ advising fee, application fee တောင်းမလဲနော် This is just cruel. ဘာဖြစ်လို့ဒီကလေးတွေစီကနေငွေကြေးအမြတ်ထုတ်ချင်တယ်လဲ Unless you already are struggling, ဒါ CDM ဆရာဆရာမတွေကိုမပြောဘူးနော် CDM ဆရာဆရာမကိုတိုင်းပြည်ထဲမှာနေနေတဲ့ဆရာဆရာမငွေကြေးခက်ခဲတယ် application fee ကောက်တယ်လက်ခံနိုင်တယ်ဒါပေမဲ့အထူးသဖြင့် foreign based ဆရာဆရာမငွေကြေးတက်နိုင်အရန်တက်နိုင်တာမဟုတ်ရင်တော့အရန်ကျက်တဲနေတဲ့အခြေအနေမဟုတ်ရင် application fee just to share information that is available by Google search 9000တသိန်း why I don't understand မကောက်သင့်ပါဘူးနော် Free admissions is a way that you can provide accessibility to your students, especially those who are displaced youths. Combining written and oral interviews when you are interviewing the students. Because some students, they are really good at written, they can write essays and they can explain, oh, please, I am the perfect candidate for your program, but they are shy. If you're just doing oral interview, you will think they are bad students and you are missing out on a youth or maybe even multiple young people who really had potential to excel. And on the flip side, other people prefer and do better when they are orally interviewed. They do not write well. So you can improve accessibility by combining written and oral interviews when you are looking for students to join your program. And as educators, it is also very important to identify the types of support that your students will need to fully participate. Some might need financial support just a little. Some might need more academic support. Some might need language training. Some might need internet access. And then we have to provide different ways of participation. In this day and age, because of political instability, internet access, electricity cuts, you have to give them opportunities to make up for the classes they missed. You can upload lecture slides, you can share video recordings. You have to think about different ways of participation without penalizing the students when it is not necessary. So next value that I hold as an educator teaching displaced youths is accountability. I always set community standards and ensure that both me and my students are accountable to these students. In every first class of whatever course I'm teaching, I will set aside some time and then talk with the students, work together to come up with community standards that everyone has to obey. It is very important to include the young people's input when you are setting these standards. Rule 1, 2, 3, 4 ဆရာပြောတာဒါဆရာမပြောတာဒါဒီတိုင်းလိုက်နာရမယ်အဲ့လိုကြီးအမြဲမပြောမဲ့အစား လူငယ်တွေဒီအတန်းထဲမှာဘယ်လို environment ကိုလိုချင်လဲဆိုတာသိရအောင်ကိုကအတန်းရဲ့စီမင်းစည်းကမ်းချတဲ့အချိန်မှာဒီလူငယ်တွေရဲ့ input ကအရန်အရေးကြီးပါတယ် and you have to be crystal clear about what is not acceptable in the learning environment racism is not acceptable sexism not acceptable or religious discrimination not acceptable ကျမတင်တဲ့အတန်းတွေထဲမှာဆိုရင် အိန္ဒိယရောက်နေတယ်ဘင်္ဂလားဒေ့ရှ်ရောက်နေတယ်ထိုင်းရောက်နေတယ် displaced student လေးတွေအများကြီးပါတယ် different ethnicity different religion အဲ့လိုလူတွေအရင် diverse ဖြစ်တဲ့အတန်းကိုသင်ရတဲ့အခါမှာဆက်စချင်းကတည်းကဘာသာရေးခွဲခြားလို့မရဘူးနော်လူမျိုးရေးခွဲခြားလို့မရဘူးနော်ဆိုတာတေချာချမှတ်ထားမှသာလေအားလုံးအတွက်အောင်မြင်နိုင်တဲ့ conducive ဖြစ်တဲ့ class environment ကိုရနိုင်မှာဖြစ်တယ် And the consequences for violators need to be explicitly agreed upon and outlined. If someone says a racist remarks, what are you going to do? What are the disciplinary action? You have to outline it from the beginning. For example, လူမျိုးရေးဘာသာရေးခွဲခြားသောစကားကိုပြောမိရင်ကျောင်းအုပ်နဲ့ဆရာမနဲ့ကျောင်းသားနဲ့ one-on-one meeting ထိုင်ပြီး disciplinary action အဖြစ်ပါလုပ်မလဲ suspension လုပ်မလားထပ်ပြီးတော့ suspension လုပ်ထား warning လုပ်ထားရတဲ့မှာထပ်ကျူးလွန်ရ classroom environment ကိုဖျက်ဆီးရလူတယောက်ဖြစ်လာတဲ့အခါမှာဒီကျောင်းသားကိုထုတ်မလားအဲ့လိုမျိုးအဆင့်အဆင့်ဘယ်လို action ပေးမယ်ဆိုတာအစကတည်းက you have to set it clearly ပါ why you have to be crystal clear and set the actions and share them in the first class because that way students know what to expect and if they do not want to face the consequences then they will not be disrupting the environment. Again, everyone needs to respect different lived experiences and perspectives and also provide an opportunity for student feedback in your class. If someone deliberately violates the standard, the perpetrator needs to be held accountable. So let's go to EDI, the third value. Equity, diversity, inclusion. We'll start with equity. A lot of people have heard the word equality. Equality assumes that every one of the youth that you're teaching, they start from the same place and need the same support. In theory, that sounds good, equality for everyone. In reality, that is not true in society because everyone comes from different places. We cannot just give them a same set support and assume that this is enough. We have to lean on equity. Equity means giving people the resources they need to succeed. These resources may differ based on their needs and circumstances. I'm just going to check the time. We do have some time. So we'll do equity exercise. We'll just take one student again to volunteer. So let's think about our 3 student examples again. The Rohingya student from Cox's Bazar with limited Burmese skills, CDM student from Rangoon, now a PDF member in Zagat, and then of course the current student displaced in Thailand and having difficulty to pursue education due to lack of documentation. So think about these students again in your mind. As an educator, how would you ensure equity for them so that they can be successful, they can thrive in your class? ဘယ်လိုမျိုးလေးတွေလုပ်ပေးမလဲဘယ်လိုမျိုး equity consideration လေးတွေလုပ်ပေးမလဲအဲ့လိုလုပ်ပေးရင်ဒီကျောင်းသားတွေကအောင်မြင်နိုင်မလဲ One volunteer. You can raise your hand, you can unmute yourself. No this is such a good reflection exercise no one is judging you we are just really thrilled to hear your thoughts
Hello, teacher. I want.
Okay, ကျော်ထပ်ပြောမယ် but သူထပ်မပြောခင်တခြားမပြောရသေးတဲ့လူရှိလား If not, we can let him answer again. But I want someone who hasn't participated to answer. Maybe a woman. We've already had 2 young men who are really good at participating. I will just call a name now. I see someone smiling. ပြုံးနေတာတွေ့တယ်နန်းအေးမြကြီး
Yes. I was silent because I don't really have like idea for that, but I will just say for the example one with the limited Burmese language scale, maybe we can if maybe if he understand like English or something, so maybe we can try to speak in that language for him, not like partially, not full time. Maybe by making friends with other, maybe he can also improve like Burmese language skill. I guess that will be the equity for him. Because we are giving what he need. And then for the example two, maybe we could, as an educator, we could provide like counseling session or consulting for maybe like for his mental health. Maybe he might feel physically um, unsafe or something like that. So we could provide with a even though we cannot provide a safe place, but we can also like provide like mental health, like by consulting or something like that. Yeah. And then for example three, the problem here is like due to the lack of documentation. So as an educator, so instead of asking like documentation, like full documentation, so we could accept him or her, a current student, because they don't have full documentation, so they cannot access the higher education. So we can make a chance, maybe like an option. You can attend this class without full documentation or something like that. Yeah, this is my thought. Thank you, teacher. Yes.
Thank you very much. Really great answers. မစင်စားရသေးဘူးပြောရနော် but your answers are very good. စဉ်းစားပါတယ် Jocelyn, you wanted to add something. Did you have any additional thoughts on Nang's answer, or did you have any additional points you want to quickly make?
Yes, teachers. Yes, teachers. This is the equity exercises from the identity barriers to implementation solutions. And so for the Rohingya students, I think we need 3 points. Firstly, scaffolded instructions. Secondly, culturally responsive teachings. And third, peer support. I guess. For the first scaffolded instruction, we should use visual aid, bilingual glossaries, and simplify English or Burmese instruction to bridge the language gaps. For the second, culturally responsive teachings, we can incorporate examples and context familiar to their background to lower the affective filter and increase engagements. And the last, peer support, we can manage to pair them with the language buddies who can help translate or explain complex concepts in a lower stakes environment. And for the second Syrian or PDS students, I think they need asynchronous learning. Since they are in a conflict zone with unpredictable internet and safety risks, we provide recorded lessons and offline materials, PDF file or videos they can access when safe. And the second, security protocols use encrypted platform for communications and allow the use of pseudonym to protect their identity from potential surveillance. And third one is trauma-informed pedagogies. We acknowledge the high stress environments they live in. Offer flexible deadlines and focus on essential learning outcomes rather than rigid attendance. For the displaced Korean students, I think there is alternative traditionally, I think, since they lack documentations, help them build a competency-based portfolio that prove their skills and knowledge to alternative university or scholarship blocks. The second thing is we should make to them for bridge programs, connects them with GED or IGCSE preparation program that often assess students without standards national IDs, serve as a gateway to international higher educations. Now, the last thing is advocacies, act as a connector to NGO or educational network in Thailand that specialize in providing higher education access to undocumented or displaced youth teachers. This is my discussion. Thank you, teacher.
Thank you very much for sharing, Joe. Your answers are also complementary to Nang's answers. Really great. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so the second word in EDI, diversity. Let's talk about it. Myanmar is, as we all know, a very diverse country, more than 100 officially recognized ethnicities and 4 major religions coexisting. Why I do say officially recognized ethnicities because there are also many people from other ethnic and religious backgrounds who have been living in Myanmar for generations, who currently live in Myanmar, their ancestors live there, but they are not yet recognized by any Burmese law or constitution. The war in Myanmar right now, along with the consequent economic and immigration crises that triggered, has cut access to higher education for millions of youths from different walks of life, as we all know. And this issue disproportionately affects the youths from the minority backgrounds. When I say minority, it could be sexual minority, it could be ethnic minority, it could be religion minority, so many different types of minority. Because in Myanmar, because we are very ethnically diverse, when we see the word minority, we just think, Dainda, Tayo, Myanmar. But there could be a lot of different types of minorities. As educators, we need to create educational opportunities intentionally targeting our diverse students. Diversity needs to be considered from the beginning when you start programming, thinking about designing your curriculum. Diversity is not something to be an afterthought. So how do we do the word I, inclusion, at every stage? You have to incorporate diversity considerations at every stage of your programming and delivery to ensure everyone feels included. There are some areas where diversity can be implemented to promote inclusion. Again, admissions decision-making, curriculum design, syllabus citations, ethnic and religious holiday accommodations, linguistic considerations, grading rubrics, people who want to use preferred names or preferred pronouns. Those are just some examples. And I wanted to celebrate EDI. It is really important to show our young people, especially those from the marginalized backgrounds, that people who are like them, who look like them, who sound like them can be successful. Representation feels very good. It can be inspirational. It can help break a lot of barriers in higher education. An example, I implemented this speaker series called Happy Hour Speaker Series. When I was the head of comparative politics diploma program at SUM, I invited established scholars and professionals within the broader Myanmar diaspora to connect with CPDP students. And this environment provided an accessible networking opportunity that is not commonly available for displaced students. And the speaker's work has influenced many students' academic and career trajectories. We have a Chin ethnic professor at Yale University in the United States who came and spoke to us. And we also had a Shan professor, researcher based in Australia. They are from ethnic background. They came from humble beginnings in Myanmar. Now they are very established, successful. And we want our youth to see, hey, you can be successful like them too. You can overcome the barriers like them too. It gives them hope, inspiration. And these scholars, these people can actually share their real life, how they did it, so that we can learn from their experiences as well. So we also want to talk about mentorship. As educators, we teach, we grade, but do we really mentor? You have to think about that. Because mentorship is a really rewarding experience. It's not only for the students, but also for educators like us. Mentorship allows us to better understand young people's academic and professional needs and enables us to support them in achieving their goals. Mentorship is guidance provided by an experienced person in any field based on their professional and lived expertise. We have to view this as a working alliance between both the mentor and mentee. Symbiotic relationship, working alliance lo kore po no. So we have to define the goals for this partnership from the outset. What does the mentee want to get out of this experience? What are you hoping to learn from mentoring the displaced youth? Through mentorship, we can support the displaced young people's continuous success outside our classroom, beyond traditional teaching. So, what does success beyond the classroom look like, and how can you support it? We want to give them access to higher education and opportunities to thrive academically, but also professionally. And this type of access can contribute to a sense of peace and pride for the young people living in socio-political turmoil. So as educators, you can write them recommendation letters when they apply for different programs, fellowships, scholarships. You can help them with networking opportunities if they are interested about, let's say, disarmament, nuclear proliferation, if they are interested about constitution. If it's not your area of expertise, but you know another educator who teaches this area, connect this person with the student, right? You might not know everything. For example, I focus on comparative politics. I focus on women, peace, security, defense. But if someone asks, well, actually, a master's student asked me last week, Siama, constitution saja nere, Siama interview ne. Siama doesn't know much about constitution. I don't want to be, oh yeah, I'll give you interview and just give medium quality, right? I want them to have high quality responses. So what I did was, instead of just taking the opportunity for myself, I told him that I will connect him with people who already know a lot about the institution, who are experts, and I made that connection happen. So networking opportunity, you can help connect the students with other established educators in the areas that are beyond your expertise if they are interested in that. You can also share academic and professional development opportunities, scholarship opportunities, financial aid opportunities, internships, fellowship, workshops. Whenever you come across something that looks good for one of your students or for a lot of your students, please share them with them. It takes 2 minutes. Meeting one-on-one when needed with struggling students in your class and providing additional resources as needed. Providing language tutoring if you have the resources, internet funding, revision sessions. If you have extra funding for your program, you can do small awards for the top student. It makes students really happy. I got first. I got the thing. I'm really happy. I'm really proud. It gives them more motivation. And bonuses for teaching assistants, but the funding stuff, only if you have resources. These are not mandatory. But the top half of the stuff, recommendation letters down to language tutoring, you can do it for free. It only takes a few minutes of your time out of your day, and it really makes a change in your student's life. So last but not least, we have reflexivity. It is a set of continuous, collaborated, and multifaceted practices through which educators can self-consciously critique themselves, appraise, and evaluate how their subjectivity and context influences their processes. It is a way to embrace and value our own subjectivity. Some ways that I personally practice this include, I always read student feedback. I have a feedback form in the last class share, anonymous. Students just like tell me what things are really working well for them, what things I need improvement on. For example, when I started teaching the Myanmar students in the first semester, I spoke in English. I spoke really fast. They're like, Siama, slow down. I'm like, oh, okay. Siama needs to slow down. Second class, I spoke a lot slower. You have to read the student feedback, identify the areas for improvement in your own teaching, and then implement positive change so that the students will better understand your teaching and get more out of your course delivery. And you can also do weekly and monthly self-reflections on student progress, attention, and retention. This doesn't have to be formal. You just think, oh, the past month, I have noticed this student from Sagai region missed 2 classes out of 4. What is happening? You have to follow up with them. Oh, this Rohingya student, he was talking a lot in the first 3 classes, but he just muted the rest of the sessions and then no video anymore. Is he okay? What is his life in the camp? So you have to reflect regularly how your students are doing, if there's any negative trend. If so, reach out to students and offer your support proactively. And last but not least, you have to evaluate how your own strengths and weaknesses influence your teaching and revise your delivery methods when it is necessary. So those are the 5 values I would really recommend for educators who are teaching displaced youth in and from Myanmar. We are good on time. So I have a reflexivity exercise. Just need one person again, someone who hasn't spoken yet. What are some ways that you can implement reflection, practice reflexivity as an educator? အခုစာသင်နေတဲ့ဆရာဆရာမတွေဘယ်လိုမျိုးကိုပြန် reflection လုပ်မလဲကိုယ့်ရဲ့သင်ကြားရေးကိုတိုးတက်စေမလဲ some ideas some thoughts you can just raise your hand မပြုံးနေလဲကျမခေါ်မှာပါနော်နာမည်က if you are not smiling I will still call your name video ပိတ်လိုက်လဲမပြုံးနေလဲ I will call your name ပါ if there is no volunteer I will just call a random name I see Wine Chit Zen. Wine, are you here?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Is that
Okay, by
Neelan
the way, can you
speaking
hear me
or Juan
clearly?
speaking?
Yeah.
ပြောပါ
Yeah. Okay. Currently I'm working as an assistant teacher at an international school. From my experience, the thing that has come to my mind for that question is, recently, like you said, something there, I mentioned that, and do really and educate mentor like that. When I last year, I didn't reflect like that. So my class was a little bit chaotic. Uh, it didn't happen that I hope. So yeah, that is the first way I think. And then another one is when I teach some class grade 5 on the characteristic of good teacher and bad teacher like that, and then a lot of them write it they are their own opinion who are good at who is a good teacher, who is a bad teacher like that. From there I read it again and again. I reflected myself. Did I do lighting or lighting? No, yeah. This 2 weeks yeah, that reflect me as an educator. Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing, Yilin. At the beginning, when you're new to teaching a certain group of people, I'm very used to teaching in Canada. So when I first started teaching the people in Myanmar, I just taught how I was teaching in Canada. But the context is really different. It didn't transfer. So when students are giving you constructive feedback, it is really important that you don't take it personally. They will say, "Siama saka pyo yan myan ne," or they will say, "Siama made me read 3 articles. I'm in the PDF. I don't have time to read 3 articles. So I have to revise. Oh, okay. Students are doing other things, like 1 article a week, but read it carefully." So I really appreciate Neely acknowledging that at the beginning things can be chaotic, yes, but we can improve the quality of teaching and then student satisfaction, learning outcomes through reflection as educators. Thank you for your answer. So now that we talk about how, as educators, we can help, the second portion of the topic that we're going to talk about, how can women help our displaced youths, particularly women educators like us? How does Women, Peace and Security, WPS, tie into supporting the displaced youths in Myanmar? So what is Women, Peace and Security? This is the definition from Government of Canada. The armed conflict around the world can affect women, men, girls, and boys in very different ways. Women and girls face discrimination based on their gender a lot. Displaced women and refugees are especially vulnerable. They are the most vulnerable, unfortunately, to conflict-related sexual violence, CRSV. At the same time, though, women and girls in our society play a key role in preserving our communities. Women's economic and social responsibilities may increase in times of war. This is because a lot of men, they get kidnapped, unfortunately abducted out of nowhere by the junta, and suddenly only women are left in the house. Who's gonna take care of the family financially, right? So you have to take on a lot of enforcing responsibility as a woman in times of war. Women often act as agents of peace too, leading movements that eventually bring the warring parties to negotiation table. Women often address the root causes of the conflict and increase the community buy-in. However, yet conflict resolution processes frequently exclude women still to this day around the world. So WPS in the context of Myanmar, our younger generation, any gender, is becoming more open to discussing women's rights now compared to my generation, compared to my parents, grandparents' generation, right? When I look at my students, they are already very aware about women's rights, supporting women's political participation. I'm like, wow, this is very different from when I was growing up in the 90s, in the 80s, right? So our younger generation is becoming a lot more open to discussing these gender issues. Unfortunately, that difference in willingness to discuss does not automatically translate to gender-sensitive considerations in important policy-making processes across different sectors, especially during the wartime. However, education has a little bit of a caveat, an exception. Women tend to be the dominant gender in the education sector in Myanmar. ဆရာမဟာဆရာထက်ပိုများတဲ့ So naturally, women's leadership and authority are somewhat more accepted by the general public in the education sector. As women in Myanmar, from Myanmar, we can use this exception as an opportunity to become more effective leaders who support the displaced young people in our country. So women in the war in Myanmar, gender-based violence is extremely common right now, post-coup. Rape has historically used as a weapon of war, especially against ethnic minority women in Myanmar's history, which is very ugly, but we have to recognize that it's happening, that has happened. As the junta's conscription law recently has driven a mass exodus of young men to neighboring countries and beyond, many women have to take on additional family responsibilities now, often taking care left behind in the country, taking care of elderly and the children in war. Through women's gendered experiences of war, we develop a unique perspective on building peace and security that other genders might not see. This knowledge allows women to support displaced young people in creative ways outside of mainstream measures such as the peace talks and ceasefire negotiations. So what are some gender barriers that displaced young women face that deter them from accessing their higher education opportunities? As women, we can easily identify gender barriers that these women might face in their pursuit of higher education. These are just a few examples, not exhaustive as all. Young displaced women are more likely to be burdened with household chores and caretaking responsibility compared to young men in their own families. They might feel unsafe leaving their homes or shelters to join a physical classroom due to gender-based violence in wartime. And traditionally, they are discouraged from speaking up about their opinions in public spaces. They are taught to be demure, they are taught to be quiet, obey, listen. And gender-specific health concerns we also have to think about it, such as menstruation, pregnancy. These things can also negatively affect young women's participation in higher education opportunities. So how can we address these issues and barriers with gendered supports? The ways that women educators like us can support these young women can include providing flexible learning options for young mothers and young women who are primary caretakers of their family members. We can educate the general public about gender-based violence in conflict and advocate for the rights of the survivors, including their right of education. A lot of the time when a woman has experience with rape, sexual violence, that is not their fault. That is not their fault at all. When I say a lot of the time is because a lot of the time survivors, even when they try to pursue higher education opportunities, there is social stigma. People gossip, people talk. အတင်းပြောတယ်ဒီမိန်းကလေးဟာ not pure ဒီမိန်းကလေးဟာ rape victim they don't want to talk to this girl because she is not a virgin nonsense နော်ဒီမိန်းကလေးဘလို့အတွေ့အကြုံဖြစ်ခဲ့သူစာသင်ခြင်းနဲ့သူစာတတ်ခြင်းနဲ့ဆိုရင် we have the duty to provide the education to her. So it is really important to educate the general public about gender-based violence and conflict and advocate for these women survivors. They are very brave. They deserve to be included and they deserve to have access to education. And we can be women educators, we can be safe people who listen to these young women empathetically. We listen to them talk about their experiences as displaced young women learners, and we can incorporate through their stories, we can incorporate their present needs into our programming. We need to support the young women who also want to enter male-dominated fields, and we make them believe that they can succeed. For example, the field, you think only men can succeed, right? Personally, I also work as a consultant analyst for defense and security in the Indo-Pacific. That is outside of that is more of a research portfolio I didn't talk about. So, ကျမကာကွယ်ရေးလုံခြုံရေးအကြံပေးသူတည်တည်ဖြစ်လဲအလုပ်လုပ်တယ် This field 90% of men. The higher you go, မိန်းကလေးတွေမတွေ့ရတော့ဘူး just man, man, man. A lot of the time, I'm the only woman in the room. But I'm okay with that because သူတို့လည်းကာကွယ်ရေးလုံခြုံရေးရေငုပ်သင်္ဘောအကြောင်းပြောနိုင်တယ်ဒီစစ်ပွဲအကြောင်းသူတို့ပြောနိုင်တယ်သူတို့ကယောက်ျားလေကျမမိန်းကလေးပဲမဲ့ကျမလည်းဒီအကြောင်းလေးသိတယ်ကျမလည်းပြောနိုင်တယ်ကျမလည်းစိတ်ဝင်စားတယ် There are a lot of women in Myanmar who might be interested in these fields နော်မျိုးသားတွေအများစုလုပ်တဲ့အလုပ်တွေကိုစိတ်ဝင်စားတဲ့မိန်းကလေးတွေတကယ်ရှိတယ်ကျမအရင်ကတပည့်လေးတယောက်ဆိုကားရမ်းပြင်တယ်တော်တယ်မင်္ဂလေးတရုတ်မလေးတယောက်တည်းကားပြင်တယ်ပရင်နာပြင်တယ်ရှင်းမြအကုန်ပြင်တယ်တော်လိုက်တာဘယ်သူကြောက်တယ်လေဒီ field ကို college သွားမယ်ဒီ field ကို license ယူမယ်သူကြောက်တယ်ယောက်ျားလေးတွေပဲလုံနေကြမင်္ဂလေးတွေပဲတယောက်တည်းသူလုံနိုင်မှာမလားသူ့ကိုအထင်သေးမလား no အဲ့လိုစိတ်ဓာတ်တွေကိုမရှိတော့အောင်ဒီမျိုးသမီးလေးတွေကအမျိုးသားအများစုလုပ်တဲ့အလုပ်မှာအောင်မြင်နေဖြစ်ထွန်းခြင်းနဲ့စိတ်ရှိရ potential ရှိရဆိုရင် you need to support these women and you need to make them believe they can succeed no matter what. And finally, we can connect these young women with gender-specific opportunities, mentorship, financial aid, workshop, fellowship, so on and so forth. I want to note that men in the room, အခုခန်းထဲမှာရှိနေတဲ့အမျိုးသားဆရာတွေကလည်းအမျိုးသမီးလေးတွေကို support လုပ်နိုင်ပါတယ် Men can also support displaced young women using the same approaches I just listed on this slide. However, in many cases, ဒီစစ်ပွဲတဲ့နေကိုခံစားရတဲ့အမျိုးသမီးလေးတွေကဆိုရင်သူတို့ထက်အသက်ကြီးပြီးအတွေ့အကြုံပိုရှိတဲ့အမျိုးသမီးတွေစီကနေအကြံလိုချင်တာပိုများတယ်။ဘာဖြစ်လို့လဲဆိုတော့ for the purpose of safety, trust, things like that. So in many cases, these women can prefer guidance from older women who have lived through similar experiences. That's where we step in as more senior women educators. အဲ့တော့ဆရာတွေလည်းအမျိုးသမီးလေးတွေကဆရာမတွေစီတွားပြီးအကြံတောင်းတာများတယ်ဆိုရင် do not take it personally ဆရာကမတော်လို့မဟုတ်ဘူးသူတို့စိတ်ထဲမှာဆိုရင်အမျိုးသမီးဆရာမတွေကိုပို့ပြီးတော့နားလည်နိုင်မယ်လို့ထင်တဲ့အတွက်ဆရာမတွေစီတွားတာဖြစ်တယ် Therefore ဆရာတွေက don't take it personally အမျိုးသမီးလေးတွေကိုစီလာရင် support ပေးပါဒါပေမဲ့အမျိုးသမီးလေးတွေကဆရာမတွေစီကိုတွားချင်တယ်လို့ပြောရင်ကိုသိတဲ့ဆရာမတွေနဲ့ချိတ်ဆက်ပေးပါကိုမတော်လို့ကိုမကောင်းလို့အမျိုးသမီးတွေကိုစီမလာတာမဟုတ်ပါဘူးComfort of a level of comfort and trust are very important in this scenario. You have to understand. And women can support men too. ကျမတို့ဆရာမအနေနဲ့ကျောင်းသူတွေကိုပဲ support. That is not good, no? You can also support your displaced young men, but in a different way that perhaps traditional support systems exist for these young men. Some examples include incorporating diverse gender perspectives, men, women, LGBTQ experiences in your curriculum. This approach will familiarize the young men who grew up in traditional environments and who have never learned about or thought about important issues outside the masculine norm before they join your class. So this expands their education and knowledge horizon. And you can support young men who want to enter women-dominated fields, but they are also afraid of the social stigma. Flip side now, the same example, but sa tine nursing လုပ်တယ်အိမ်မှုကိစ္စထိန်းသိမ်းတယ် creative arts and craft လုပ်တယ်အဲ့လိုမျိုးတွေမှာအမျိုးသမီးတွေပုံများတွေ့ရတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့တကယ်စာသင်ခြင်းနဲ့တကယ် nursing လုပ်ခြင်းနဲ့ there are a lot of young men who want to join these fields but they might feel the same they're like oh people might think I'm too feminine people might think I'm weird because I'm a man but I want to be a nurse that is not true they can also join feminine fields and they can also succeed there as well you have to also support them to have confidence in their career choices in this field And last but not least, you can help them understand the value and importance of feminine qualities in achieving their academic and career goals. vulnerability, softness, nurturing. These are really good values to have, especially when you are going through a very difficult time, facing socioeconomic, political instability. It's nice to be soft, it's nice to be nurturing, supportive of each other. And don't let anyone tell you any differently. For the men in this room, you can have these qualities and still succeed too. These qualities can be helpful for you too. Okay, so I am going to conclude my presentation so that we have some time for the question, about 15-20 minutes. But I will just I put two young women and young men, but due to the time, we'll just take one answer from a man, one answer from a woman, from the audience. Share how a woman has supported or made an important contribution to your own education journey after the coup. ကိုယ့်ရဲ့ဒီခူးပြီးတဲ့အခါမှာကိုယ့်ရဲ့ပညာရေးကိုယ်တိုင်ကသင်တာဖြစ်စေကိုကသူများကိုသင်ပေးတာပဲဖြစ်စေအဲ့ journey မှာကိုယ့်အတွက်ဘယ်မျိုးသမီးတစ်ယောက်ကများပံ့ပိုးကူညီပေးခဲ့ဘူးလဲအဲ့လိုမျိုးရှိခဲ့ရင် to celebrate women I want you to share these positive stories.
Hello, Chen.
Yes.
ကျမဗမာလိုပဲပြောလိုက်ပါမယ်နော်ကျမကခုတ်ပြီးရဲ့ကာလတော့မဟုတ်ဘူးပေါ့နော်ဒီခုတ်ကာလပေါ့ကျမဖာစီခွင့်သိမ်းခံနေရတဲ့ကာလတစ်လျှောက်မှာကျမအထဲမှာရောက်နေတဲ့အချိန်မှာကျမကိုတင်ကြားရေးနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့မှပြည်သူဆောင်မခဲ့တဲ့အမျိုးသမီးနှစ်ဦးရှိတယ်ပေါ့နော်ပထမတစ်ခုကတော့ကျမကိုChinese ကို healing သင်ပေးတာပါနောက်တစ်ဦးကတော့သူကကိုနိုင်ကဆောင်းဆောင်တစ်သက်လူရမရှိကြတဲ့အမျိုးသမီးလေးကကျွန်တော်ကိုအင်္ဂလိပ်စာပေါ့ sharing လုပ်ပြရအောင်နော်ကျွန်တော်တို့အထဲမှာစာရွက်မရှိဘောပင်မရှိဘဲနဲ့ကျွန်တော်တို့ရဲ့ခေါင်းထဲကိုပဲဒီ Facebook ကနေပေးတဲ့အသိဉာဏ်လေးကိုကျွန်တော်ဒီရိုက်တွင်းပြီးတော့မှသင်ကြားခဲ့ရတဲ့အချိန်မှာကျွန်တော်တို့မှာစိတ်ပိုင်းဆိုင်ရာရောဒီခန္ဓာကိုယ်ပိုင်းဆိုင်ရာရောအကျဉ်းချက်အများကြီးကြနေတဲ့ကာလတစ်လျှောက်မှာသူတို့ကိုယ်နိုင်လည်းအကျဉ်းချက်ကြနေတဲ့ကာလတစ်လျှောက်မှာသူတို့ကဟိုပေါ့နော်ဘယ်လိုပြောမလဲအားနည်းသွားတာမျိုးမဟုတ်ဘဲနဲ့ရှေ့ကနေတော့မှဆက်ဆက်တည်းတင်ပေးခဲ့တဲ့ဆိုတော့ကျွန်တော်မှတ်ရမိပါတယ်ကျွန်တော်တို့အဲ့ဒီလိုဖက်ခဲနေတဲ့ကာလတစ်လျှောက်မှာအဲ့လိုတင်ယူပေးခဲ့တဲ့တင်ပေးခဲ့တဲ့ကိုယ်တိုင်လည်းတင်ယူနိုင်ခဲ့တဲ့ကိုလည်းproud ဖြစ်နေပါတယ်ဆိုဒါကတော့ကျွန်မရဲ့ပုတ်ပြီးတော့ကာလတော့မဟုတ်ပဲလေအဲ့ဒီကာလအတွင်းမှာပေါ့နော်ဒီအခန်းစီးတိတ်တိတ်ခံရတဲ့ကာလအတွင်းမှာကျွန်မကြုံတွေ့ခဲ့ရတဲ့အဖြစ်အပျက်လေးတစ်ခုနောက်တစ်ခုကတော့အစကတော့ပြီးမှပဲမေးမလို့ပေါ့နော်ဒီချက်ဒါပေမဲ့ဒါအခုတခါလဲကျွန်မကြုံတာနဲ့ကျွန်မမေးလိုက်ပါမယ်ဟိုကျွန်မဒါကတော့ကျွန်မချက်ကိုမေးစစ်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ပဋိပက္ခကာလအတွင်းပေါ့ဒီ2021ဖေဖော်ဝါရီကာလဖေဖော်ဝါရီ1ရက်နေ့ကနေပြီးတော့ပေါ့နော်အာဏာသိမ်းချိန်ကနေစပြီးတော့မှဒီဒါတော့ဟို feminine နဲ့ပတ်သက်တဲ့ခေါင်းတိုက်တယ်လေးဟုတ်လို့လေကျွန်မတခါလဲမေးလိုက်တာပါရှင်အမျိုးသမီးတွေကအာဏာသိမ်းချိန်ကနေစပြီးတော့မှငင်းမျိုးလာဆန္ဒပြတယ်နောက် CDM movement တွေမှာပါဝင်တယ်နောက် CDM movement ပြီးတဲ့အခါမှာ CDM movement နဲ့ပဲမလုံလောက်ဘူးငင်းမျိုးလာဆန္ဒပြနေပဲမလုံလောက်ဘူးလက်နဲ့ဆွဲကိုင်လှုပ်ရှားမှုတွေမှာပါဝင်ရမယ်ဆိုတဲ့ခါကျရင်လည်းအမျိုးသမီးတွေပါဝင်လာတာရှိတယ်ပေါ့နော်နောက်ပြီးတဲ့ကာလတစ်ခါမှလည်းပြန်လည်ပြောင်းရေးလုပ်ငန်းတွေမှာဒီအမျိုးသမီးတွေအများကြီးဆက်ဆက်မှန်ပါဝင်လာကြတာရှိတယ်နော်အဲ့ထဲမှာပဋိပက္ခအခြေအနေကြောင့်မို့လို့ဖန်ဆီးနှိပ်စက်ခံရတာလေပဋိပက္ခကြောင့်မို့လို့ကိုယ်လက်အင်္ဂါဆုံးလုပ်ခဲ့ရတာလေနောက်mental ဘိုင်းနဲ့ physical ဘိုင်းတွေထိခိုက်တာလေနောက် abuse လုပ်ခံရတဲ့အမျိုးသမီးတွေအများကြီးရှိခဲ့တယ်ပေါ့နော်အဲ့ထဲမှာအဲ့လိုပညာရေးကိုဆုံးဖြတ်နိုင်ခြင်းမရှိသေးတဲ့ကလေးလေးတွေလည်းမျိုးသမီးငယ်တွေကလေးငယ်တွေလည်းအများကြီးပါတယ်ပေါ့နော်ဒါပေမဲ့အဲ့ဒီကလေးတွေရဲ့ရှေ့ဆက်အနာဂတ်လုပ်ငန်းတွေအတွက်လမ်းပြောင်းရာမျိုးကိုယ့်ရဲ့ဒီတော်လှန်ရေးကာလတစ်လျှောက်မှာပါတဲ့လူတွေကိုနှိုက်က discriminate လုပ်နေရမျိုးတွေကိုလည်းအများကြီးကြုံတွေ့နေရတာရှိတယ်နော်ဒီထဲမှာတချို့ကဒီပြန်လဲဆောင်ရေးကာလအဖြစ်ဆိုသူ့ကာလအဖြစ်ဆိုဒီပညာရေးနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့မှ movement တွေလုပ်နေရတယ်ရှိပေမဲ့တချို့အမျိုးသမီးတွေတို့abuse လုပ်ခံရတဲ့အမျိုးသမီးတော်လည်းကောင်းဒီ disrespect ဖြစ်သွားတဲ့အမျိုးသမီးတော်လည်းကောင်း clean ငယ်ကိုတော်လည်းကောင်းကိုရဲလူတွေက discriminate လုပ်နေရတယ်လည်းကြုံရပါတယ်เนาะအဲ့လိုကြုံနေရတဲ့လူတွေကလေးလေးတွေအမျိုးသမီးငယ်တွေအတွက်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဟိုကျမတို့တွေအနေနဲ့ဘယ်လိုမျိုးရှေ့ဆက်ပြီးတော့မှလောက်ကန်ပြီးရဆိုလို့ရှိရင်သင်ပြမလဲဆိုတာကိုသိချင်တယ်ဒါလေးကတော့မိကုန်းမှာဒီကျအခုဖြေလဲရပါတယ်ပြီးမှပြန်ဖြေပေးလဲရပါတယ်ဆရာ thank you ပါဆရာ
Thank you very much for sharing. It is really powerful to learn about. Even when you are detained, you also learn from each other as a group of women who share the same journey toward the pro-democracy journey. မေကွန်ကိုဖြေရမယ်ဆိုရင်ကဟုတ်ပါတယ် I recognize this even within the pro-democracy movement, unfortunately, there are still a lot of social stigma and discrimination that is imposed on the survivors, the affected women and children. What we can do as educator is that we have to protect these people's identity, but at the same time, we have to, if you're in a privileged position, we have to educate the public within the revolution. ဒီ တော်လှန်ရေးတွေကလူတွေကိုပဲ public education ပိုပြီးများများပေးရမယ်။ဘာဖြစ်လို့လဲဆိုတော့ကအခု in Myanmar it is very Facebook is a double-edged sword, right? တခုခုဖြစ် Facebook ပေါ်တင်လိုက်တယ်လူတွေရန်ဖြစ်ကြတယ်လူတွေရန်ဖြစ်ကြတယ် revolution နဲ့လူအချင်းချင်းလည်းရန်ဖြစ်ကြတယ်ဒီအမျိုးသမီးကိုတကယ်မရိုက်ဘူးဒီကလေးကိုတကယ်ကြောင်းထဲမှာခွဲခြားဆက်ဆံတာမဟုတ်ဘူးဟုတ်တယ်မဟုတ်ဘူးဟုတ်တယ်ပြီးရင်ကိုပြောတာမှန်လို့ဆိုနဲ့ဒီအမျိုးသမီးပုံတွေကလေးပုံတွေပြန့်ကျဲနေအောင်တင်လိုက်တယ်တကယ် effective way မဟုတ်ပါဘူးကိုပြောတာမှန်လို့ဆိုကိုကဘယ်လောက်ကူညီပေးခြင်းရင်သူတို့ဆန္ဒမပါရင်ဒီပုံတွေတင် social media တင်ရန်ဖြစ်ပြီးရင်ပြီးွားအမျိုးကတကယ် sustainable approach မဟုတ်ပါဘူးเนาะတကယ်ဖြစ်တဲ့နာကဒီကိုယ့်စီကိုယုံကြည်လို့လာပြီးတော့ပြောပြတဲ့သူတို့ရဲ့ခံစားခဲ့ရတာကိုပြောပြတဲ့အမျိုးသမီးတွေကလေးတွေကိုအရင်ဆုံး consent မေးရမယ်သူတို့ရဲ့ experience ကို share ဖို့ရေးဖို့ပြောဖို့အဆင်ပြေမလားနာမည်လွှဲပေးမယ်ပုံမတင်ဘူးဗီဒီယိုမတင်ဘူးသဘောမပါရင်တင်တဲ့ဥပမာဒဏ်ရာတွေပါလာမယ်တင်ပြမယ်ဆိုရင်တော့ privacy လေးစားပြီးပုံမွားပေးတာအတန်ဖြောက်ပေးအတန်ပြောင်းပေးတာမျိုးလုပ်ပေးရမယ်ပြီးွားရင်က sustainable education ဖြစ်ရမယ်နင်ကရိုက်လိုက်တယ်နင်တို့ကရိုင်းနေနို့ကမကောင်းဘူး no ဒီလိုအဖြစ်ဖြစ်သွားတယ်ဒဏ်ရာပဲတစ်ခုရတယ်ဘယ်နေ့ပဲအချိန်မှာဖြစ်တယ်တိတိကျကျရေးမယ်ပြီးွားရင် public attention ကိုလိုချင်တဲ့အခါမှာဆိုရင်ဒီ Facebook post တင်တာ first step အနေနဲ့ကမြန်မာပြည်မှာတော့ပေါ့နော်လိုအပ်တဲ့အချိန်တွေမှာ attention လိုအပ်တဲ့အချိန်မှာလောက်ကြတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့ once you already have enough public attention you can turn it into webinars you can turn it into right into more reputable platforms လူတွေက advocacy platform ကို Facebook ကနေတဖြည်းဖြည်းတခြား platform တွေကိုရွှေ့သွားရမယ် policy maker တွေရဲ့ accountability ထားရမယ် policy maker တွေသူတို့ respond မလုပ်မချင်းကိုအမြဲတမ်းအစိုးအဖွဲ့နဲ့ကိုစာရေးရမယ်ဒီဖြစ်ဒီနေ့ကဖြစ်ခဲ့တယ်လွန်ခဲ့တဲ့တစ်လကဖြစ်ခဲ့တယ်ဒီနယ်မှာရှိတဲ့ဒီကျောင်းနေနဲ့ဘာတာဝန်ယူပေးမှာလဲမလုပ်ဘူးလားရတယ်လူငယ်များထပ်ခေါ်လာမယ်ထပ်ပြီးပြောပေးမယ်ခဏလေးကောက်ရုံမိလို့တောက်လို့မရဘူးအမြဲတမ်းသူတို့တာဝန်ခံတာဝန်ယူမှုမရှိမချင်းဒီအမျိုးသမီးလေးတွေဒီကလေးတွေကိုသူတို့ဘယ်လိုကျူးလွန်ခဲ့တယ်ဆိုတာဒီ revolution ရဲ့လူတွေကကျူးလွန်ခဲ့တော့လကောက်အပြင်လူတွေကကျူးလွန်ခဲ့တော့လကောက်ကိုက sustainable participation နဲ့အဖြေတစ်ခု response တစ်ခုမရမချင်းလုပ်ပေးရမယ် when response ရလို့ဒီလိုမျိုးအရင်ဖိအားပေးလို့ response တစ်ခုရတယ်ကိုကကြည်အေးပေးလိုက်မလားကြည်အေးပေးတာနဲ့ post တွေဖြတ်ချကိုလုပ်ခဲ့တာရဲ့အကုန် delete လုပ်ပေးတာမတူပါဘူးเนาะကိုကကြည်အေးပေးခဲ့ရင်တောင်မှကိုအတန်းထဲမှာစသင့်မယ်တခြားမျိုးတွေပဲစကားပြောခဲ့ရင်ဒီဖြစ်ပျက်ဟာဖြစ်ခဲ့တယ် solution တခုရှာပြီးပြီဒါပေမဲ့ဒီဖြစ်ပျက်ဟာဖြစ်ခဲ့တယ်နောက်မဖြစ်အောင်မျိုးဒီလိုမျိုးမလုပ်သင့်ဘူးဆိုတာကိုအမြဲတမ်းလွန်ခဲ့တဲ့၄နှစ်ကရိုက်ခံရလဲအခုအချိန်မှာ2022မှာရိုက်ခံရလဲ2026မှာဒီအကြောင်းကိုအမြဲတမ်းကိုစာသင်ထည့်ပြောမယ် relevant ဖြစ်တဲ့နေရာတိုင်းမှာထပ်ပြီးပြောမယ်ဘာဖြစ်လို့လဲဆိုတော့ we do not want their stories to die we do not want their suffering to die no we do not want their suffer I worded it the wrong way we do not want their stories of suffering to die suffering and die တဲ့နဲ့သူတို့ထပ်ပြီးမခံစားသေးဘူးဒါပေမဲ့စိတ်ထဲမှာ mental suffering trauma တွေကအများကြီးပါသွားတယ်သူတို့ဒီပေါ့နော်သူတို့ကြည်အေးပြီးပြီးနောက်မှာဒီ mental consequences တွေရှိတယ်ဒီကလေးတွေကိုဘယ်လိုဆက်ပြီး support လုပ်မလဲ educator အနေနဲ့ သူတို့ကိုလုံခြုံစိတ်ချရတဲ့ health professional mental health counseling network တွေနဲ့လည်းချိတ်ဆက်ပေးတဲ့ speak out လုပ်တယ် speak out လုပ်တယ်ကောင်းပါတယ် social media မှာပြောတယ်လုံခြုံရေးကိုစဉ်းစားပြီးရင်ကောင်းပါတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့ speak out တစ်ခုပဲလုပ်ပြီးတော့နောက်ွယ်တာဝန်ယူတာဝန်ခံမှုသူတို့လိုအပ်တဲ့ stage တစ်ခုချင်းစီမှာတယောက်လိုအပ်တာတွေမတူဘူးဥပမာအရိုက်ခံရတယ်ကိုယ်ပြေးသွားတယ် physical health လိုအပ်မယ် physical health ပြီးသွားရင်ကဲဘာမှမလုပ်ပြီးတော့မရဘူးလေ trauma informed therapy လိုအပ်မယ်ဒီကလေးတွေဒီ society တွေပြန်ဝင်လာပြီးကြောင်းတက်ချင်တယ်ဒီကြောင်းကိုကသွားအပ်ပြီးရင်ကြောင်းဒီကလေးတွေအခန်းထဲမှာဝင်ခင်မှာကလေးတွေရဲ့ educator တွေကျောင်းအုပ်တွေအဲ့အရက်ကအတိုင်းဝိုင်းရလူတွေကိုမျိုးဘယ်လိုမျိုးဖြစ်နေဖြစ်ခဲ့တဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်မို့လို့ဒီအတန်းအလူတွေဟာဒီကလေးကို discriminate မလုပ်ဖို့လိုအပ်တယ်အဲ့ဒါမျိုးလိုက်ပြီးတော့ education ပေးဖို့လိုအပ်တယ်ကျမတို့အဆင့်ဆင့်မှာ reflection လုပ်ပြီးတော့ကိုယ့်ရဲ့တုံ့ပြန်တဲ့ response ကိုချင့်ချိန်ပြီးတော့ long term support ပေးဖို့လိုအပ်တယ်လို့ထင်ပါတယ်
Okay,ကျေးဇူးတင်ပါတယ်
Thank you Okay, so now that we are doing questions, we can move on to the Q&A. This is my contact information. If you have any questions, if you want to discuss further about the topic today, if you want to just connect professionally, you can take a screenshot. I have my email, I have my LinkedIn, I have my website. On my website, you can read all my publications about Myanmar and beyond. So this is my contact information. I would invite you to keep in touch. And I am starting a new initiative. This is not gonna be big. It is not paid. It is volunteer, but I have been informally providing academic advising to displaced young people for the past 4 or 5 years now. So I just wanted to have a formal little process. I am happy to provide free 30-minute advising sessions for displaced women in and from Myanmar. မြန်မာပြည်ထဲမှာရှိနေလေလုံခြုံရေးစိတ်ချရရင်ကျမအလကား support ပေးမယ်ထိုင်းရောက်နေတယ်မလေးရှားရောက်နေတယ် Singapore ရောက်နေတယ် wherever you are if you are still a displaced person I even advise one of the displaced young women who is currently in Europe but because of her status and lack of paperwork she couldn't do anything so anyone who has forced displacement experience I will help you the only condition is that I say women here, but I've also supported men. So if you are a man and you're really in a pickle, you can write to me as well. I will make time for you. The only condition is that you have to be affected by displacement after the coup. And this is the logo. I am going to create a website in the next few months, but even before the website launches, you can email me, isabellatong@gmail.com. And then book a free appointment. I usually use Saturday to do all my Myanmar related volunteer stuff. So on the weekend, if you need advising, you can be anywhere. You can be free. You can be brainstorming ideas where to next go. You can be thinking about how to improve your teaching as an educator, or even like maybe you are thinking about getting professional development, going to study in a different place, but you want someone to look over your CV, cover letter, talk about it. I'm available. Again, this is totally free. Pasan longwa miyu babu. I wanted to help the people who actually would need and appreciate the support. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention and participation. Any other questions?
question မှမဟုတ်ဘူးပေါ့နော် reflection ပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်တယ်ပြောလို့ရတယ်ပေါ့နော်အမ Isabella ပြောသွားတယ်ဒီနေ့ browsing နဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့ကို reflect လုပ်မိတဲ့အပိုင်းမျိုးလေးရှင်လည်းပြောလို့ရပါတယ်
Hello ဆရာမကျွန်တော်မြန်မာလူလေးမဝင်မရဲလေးဆွေးနွေးကြည့်ချင်တယ်
Go ahead.
ဒီလိုပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီလိုမျိုးဆွေးနွေးပွဲတွေလုပ်ကြတယ်နောက်ကြလို့ရှိရင်ကျွန်တော်တို့နိုင်ငံမှာဒီလိုdisplay person တွေနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့ခံစားရတဲ့ပုံစံနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီး program တွေလာကြတယ်ပေါ့နော် program တွေလာကြတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့အဲ့ဒီခေါင်းစဉ်တိုင်းဒီအမျိုးသမီးတွေကိုဥတီလာတယ်နောက်ပြီးကြလို့ရှိရင် ethnicity ပေါ့နော်တိုင်းရင်းသားတွေကိုဥတီလာတယ်ပေါ့နော်ဘာဖြစ်လို့အားလုံးကမြန်မာတွေကိုမကြည့်ကြသေးတာလဲဆိုတာလေးတစ်ချက်လေးကျွန်တော်မြင်ချင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ဒီကျွန်တော်တို့ after 2021 cruise မှာကျွန်တော်တို့တကယ်ခံစားရတာတွေဒီတကယ်တမ်းကျတော့ငကိုယ်တုန်းကကျတော့တိုင်းရင်းသားတွေအားလုံးခံစားနေကြရတယ်ပေါ့နော်ဒါပေမဲ့ဒီနောက်ပိုင်း cruise မှာကျွန်တော်ခံစားနေရတာကျတော့ကျွန်တော်မြန်မာတွေဖြစ်တယ်အညာသားတွေဖြစ်တယ်အညာသားတွေဖြစ်တယ်တောက်လျှောက်ကျွန်တော်တို့အားလုံးခံစားရတယ်ခံစားရတဲ့အချိန်မှာကျွန်တော်တို့ဘာတွေထိဖြစ်လာနိုင်တဲ့ပြဿနာတွေကကျွန်တော်ရင်ဆိုင်နေရပြီလေဆိုကျွန်တော်တို့မျိုးဆက်ပြတ်မဲ့ပြဿနာကိုကျွန်တော်တို့ရင်ဆိုင်နေရပြီပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော်ရင်ဆိုင်ကျွန်တော်က Federal ကျောင်းတစ်ကျောင်းကဆရာတယောက်ဖြစ်ပါတယ်ပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီနေရာမှာဗားလေအခက်အခဲတွေတွေ့နေရလဲဆိုတော့ဒီကလေးတွေကျွန်တော်တို့ပြက်လက်လာတယ်ပေါ့နော်ကလေးတွေပြက်လက်လာတယ်နောက်ကြလို့ရှိရင်ဒီကလေးတွေဒီအမျိုးမျိုးသောအကြောင်းတရားတွေကြောင့်မို့လို့သူတို့တွေဘယ်လိုပြောမလဲဆိုမပြန်လန်းကိုတွားခဲ့ရတဲ့လူတွေလည်းရှိတယ်နောက်ကြလို့ရှိရင်စီးပွားရေးလူမှုရေးအားလုံးချို့တဲ့ခဲ့တဲ့အချိန်မှာပေါ့နော်ချို့တဲ့ခဲ့တဲ့အချိန်မှာဒီပညာရေးတွေကိုစွန့်ခွာသွားရတဲ့ကလေးတွေလည်းမြောက်များစွာရှိနေပေါ့နော်ဒါပေမဲ့အားလုံးနားလိုက်ပြီဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ရိုဟင်ဂျာခေါင်းစဉ်ကြီးကနောက်ကြလို့ရှိရင်ဘေးပတ်ချာလဲမှာရှိနေတဲ့တိုင်းရင်းသားတွေရဲ့နာမည်တွေနဲ့ပဲလာတယ်ပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော်တို့မြန်မာတွေကဘာကြောင့်မကြည့်နေကြသေးတာလဲဆိုတဲ့အချက်လေကျွန်တော်တို့ဘယ်လိုပြောမလဲဆိုဆရာမတို့သိစေချင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်သိစေချင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ဒါကတော့ကျွန်တော်ဂျားတွေကနေဖြတ်ပြီးတော့ဒီပြောဆိုနေတဲ့အရာတွေနဲ့မဆိုင်နဲ့ဝင်ဆွေးနေတာပါဆရာပါနောက်တော့ပြီးလို့ကျေးဇူးတင်ပါတယ်ကျွန်တော်ဒီလောက်ပါပဲဆရာပါ
Thank you for sharing.
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ဆရာမမြန်မာတွေကတကယ်လို့ကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီတိုင်းဆက်သွားမယ်ဆိုရင်ကျွန်တော်နောက်25နှစ်မှာဆိုလို့ကျွန်တော်တို့တိုင်းပြည်ကတော်တော်လေးအခြေအနေဆိုးမယ်လို့ကျွန်တော်တို့မြင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီပညာရေးနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့လည်းကျွန်တော်တို့တွေပြင်ဆင်ကြရမယ်ပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော်ဘာဖြစ်လို့ဆိုပြင်ဆင်မယ်ဆိုရင်လည်းကျွန်တော်တို့မြန်မာပြည်တွင်းမှာရှိတဲ့လူတွေကပဲဒီမြန်မာနိုင်ငံကိုပြင်ဆင်နိုင်မယ်လို့ကျွန်တော်မြင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ဘာဖြစ်လို့ဆိုအပြင်ကိုထွက်သွားပြီဆိုရှင်တောင်အားဖြင့်တော့ကျွန်တော်မြန်မာနိုင်ငံကိုပြန်မလာချင်ကြတော့ဘူးလေနော်ပြန်လည်းမလာဘူးကမသိတော့ဘူးပေါ့နော်မသိတဲ့လူတွေဆိုတော့ဒီအတွင်းထဲမှာရှိနေတဲ့လူတွေကိုကျွန်တော်တို့ဘယ်လိုတွေအကောင်းဆုံးဖြစ်အောင်လုပ်မလဲကျွန်တော်တို့တွေစီးစီးလုံးလုံးနဲ့ဒီပညာရေးဒါမှမဟုတ်ရှင်ကျွန်တော်တို့ရဲ့ဒီ educational pathway ပေါ့နော်လမ်းကြောင်းကြီးတစ်ခုကိုကျွန်တော်တို့ဒီအတွင်းထဲမှာပဲဒီ conflict အတွင်းထဲမှာပဲကျွန်တော်တို့ဘယ်လိုတိုးတက်အောင်လုပ်ကြရမလဲဆိုတာကိုကျွန်တော်တို့ကပြန်ပြီး sharing တွေလုပ်ကြဖို့ကျွန်တော်ကတော့တောင်းဆိုချင်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ဟုတ်ကဲ့ကျွန်တော်ရဲ့ဆွေးနွေးချက်ကတော့ပါပဲဆရာမ
Thank you for sharing. That is why I included the Zagai example in my examples. ကျမတို့ဒီ 2021 ခုပြီးတဲ့အခါမှာအညာဒေတာဟာစစ်တပ်ရဲ့ target လောက်တာအများကြီးခံရတယ်အညာဒေတာမှာ majority နေတဲ့လူတွေဗမာလူမျိုးတွေဖြစ်တယ်အဲ့ဒီအတွက်နောက်ပိုင်းမှာကျမတို့ဒီအဆင့်မြင့်ပညာရေးဖြစ်ဖြစ် any type of education opportunities ကို consider လုပ်တဲ့အခါမှာဆိုရင်ကျမအနေနဲ့ကတော့ personally အညာဒေတာကိုပါထည့်သွင်းပြီးစဉ်းစားပေးတယ်ကျမတို့ဒီနေ့ဆွေးနွေးသွားတဲ့ equality versus equity ပေါ့နော် The reason you are seeing a lot of initiatives coming from outside having titles for specific minority populations because because they know about the historical oppression these minorities face for the past decade since independence, or for some even before independence. So they have heard about these populations. That is why the funders fund for these initiatives and they come to the country. The Rohingya genocide အကြောင်းကိုသိတဲ့လူတွေအနောက်နိုင်ငံမှာအများကြီးရှိတယ် In Canada မြန်မာလို့ပြောလိုက်ရင် the first thing they think about is the Rohingya population but when you go to different country the concept changes depending on what their existing knowledge is right for Thailand if you go there and talk about Myanmar the first thing they are going to think about is migrant workers in Singapore, unfortunately, what they are going to think about when they hear the word Myanmar is the domestic worker population who are there and having to work in a very exploitative circumstances เนาะအဲ့တော့ဒီအပြင်ကလာတဲ့ initiative တွေဒီဘာဖြစ်လို့တိုင်းရင်းသားတွေအမျိုးသမီးတွေကိုဥတီလဲဆိုတော့သူတို့နိုင်ငံထဲကိုရောက်လာတဲ့မြန်မာတွေကိုကြည့်လိုက်ရင်ဒီလူတွေပဲသူတို့မြင်ဘူးတယ်ကျန်တဲ့လူတွေရှိတယ်သိတာမသိဘူး ကျမကနေဒါမှာပြောရင်ကျမမွန်ဆက်တယ်ပြောရင်သူတို့မွန်ဆိုတာဘာမှန်းတော့မသိ They don't know what Mon is, right? They only hear about Rohingya population here. The child lude, 88 before lude Kayin lumyo jang this generation do not know. အဲ့တော့ကိုကအပြင်က external initiative တွေကိုမြန်မာပြည်ကိုလာတဲ့အခါမှာဗမာလူမျိုးတွေအတွက်ပါ include ဖြစ်စေခြင်းနဲ့ဆိုရင် at the beginning stage grant writing ကိုကနေပြီးတော့ grant နေရေးမယ်သူတို့စီကိုတောင်းဆိုစာရေးမယ်ဆိုရင်ကဒီစကိုင်းမှာဖြစ်နေတာတွေမြန်မာဒီအထက်ပိုင်းအလဲပိုင်းဗမာလူမျိုးတွေဘယ်လိုဖြစ်နေတယ်ဆိုတာကိုကနေပြီးတော့မသိတဲ့လူတွေကို educate လုပ်ပေးဖို့လိုအပ်တယ်သူတို့ဒီစကိုင်းဆိုတာလဲဘာမှမသိကြဘူးဒီ funder တွေကပေါ့နော်အဲ့တော့အဲ့လိုမျိုးကိုယ့်ရဲ့ programming မှာအစကတည်းကထည့်သွင်းစဉ်းစားပြီး explicitly ရေးပြီးဖော်ပြရင်ကဒီလူတွေကနားလည်လာမယ်အော်ဒီဗမာလူမျိုးတွေလည်းသူတို့ unique struggle ရှိတယ်ငါတို့ဒီလူမျိုးတွေကိုလည်း support လုပ်ပေးခြင်းနဲ့အဲ့လိုဖြစ်လာမယ် unfortunately ကိုယ်နိုင်ငံထဲမှာလူမျိုးတွေဘောင်းဆောင်ရှိတဲ့အတွက်ဘယ်လူမျိုးပဲဒေသမှာဘယ်လိုဖြစ်နေရဆိုတာကိုအပြင်ကလာတဲ့လူတွေက connection ဒီ country နဲ့ connection မရှိဘဲ funding တည်တဲ့လာတဲ့လူတွေဟို policy တည်တဲ့လာတဲ့လူတွေမသိတဲ့အတွက်ကိုကသူတို့ကိုသိအောင်လုပ်ပေးရမယ်အဲ့ဒါမှသိရင် maybe potentially we will get initiative targeted at the population you want to help ပါအဲ့ဒါကတော့ကျမထင်တဲ့ solution တစ်ခုပေါ့နော်လူတွေကိုပြောပေးရမယ်စကိုင်းမှာဘာဖြစ်နေတယ်အရင်ခေတ်တွေတုန်းကအရင်ခေတ်တွေတုန်းကဒီ sexual violence ကိုတိုင်းသူမျိုးသမီးလေးတွေအများကြီးသူတို့တွေလောက်ကြတယ်အခုဒီရွေးကောက်ပွဲ sorry not ရွေးကောက်ပွဲအခုဒီခုအာဏာသိမ်းပြီးတဲ့အခါမှာထိမ့်သိမ်းခံရတဲ့အမျိုးသမီးတွေမြန်မာဖြစ်ဖြစ်တိုင်းသူဖြစ်ဖြစ်သူတို့အရန် abuse လုပ်ကြတယ်အဲ့တော့ you have to let the people know women initiative တွေလာရင်လည်းဒီအကြောင်းတွေကိုကပြောပြဖို့လိုအပ်တယ်ပြောပြမှလည်းကိုဘာလိုအပ်နေရဆိုတာသူတို့ကသိမယ်သိပြီးတော့ဒီတိုင်းရင်းသားတိုင်းသူ minority တာမကမြန်မာတွေလိုအပ်တင်တာပါကိုသိရင်သူတို့ကလည်းသူတို့ရဲ့ program မှာထည့်သွင်းစဉ်းစားလာမယ်လို့တော့ကျွန်မထင်ပါတယ်
Thank you for sharing the shares.
We will take one last person, Ma. If you haven't spoken yet, you can share your thoughts. Final comment, Badu Byojin Badale. Yes, Rose, go ahead.
ဟိုပေါ့အဓိကတော့ကျေးဇူးတင်နေတာပေါ့နော်ဒီ webinar register တော့မလုပ်ထားဘူးဒါပေမဲ့ဟို note တက်လာတာနဲ့ဟိုအောက်က comment မှာလည်းပဲ join လို့ရတယ်ဆိုတာနဲ့ဟိုခေါင်းစဉ်လေးကိုလည်းပဲစိတ်ဝင်စားတာနဲ့ဝင် join ဖြစ်တာပေါ့နော်ဒီနေ့ဆရာမ share သွားတဲ့အကြောင်းအရာကဟိုတကယ် Rose အခုလုပ်နေကူညီနေတဲ့အချို့ project လေးတွေပေါ့နော်project လေးမှာဆိုလို့ရှိရင်လည်းပဲဟိုတကယ်ဟို education ကအရေးပါတယ်ဆိုတာကိုဒီနောက်ပိုင်းမှာပို့ပြီးတော့မှနားလည်လာတယ်ပြီးလို့ရှိရင်လည်းပဲကိုလုံးမဲ့ project မှာဆိုလို့ရှိရင်လည်းပဲပေါ့နော်ခုနကပြောသွားတဲ့ထဲမှာပေါ့ gender based violence နဲ့ဆိုင်တဲ့ဥစ္စာတွေပြီးလို့ရှိရင် gender နဲ့ career နဲ့ပေါ့နော်အဲ့ဒါမျိုးတွေနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့ဟို idea တက်လည်းရတယ်ပေါ့နော်ဟိုဒီလူငယ်တွေအတွက်လုပ်တဲ့ program မှာဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဒါမျိုး topic တွေကအရေးပါတယ်ဆိုတာမျိုးပေါ့နော်ထည့်ဖို့စဉ်းစားဖြစ်တယ်ပေါ့နော်အခုကွာတာကို reflection လုပ်ရင်းနဲ့ပေါ့နော်ဘာလို့လဲဆိုတော့အချို့နေရလူငယ်တွေကြတော့ပေါ့နော်ဟိုဒီလိုမျိုး topic တွေအကြောင်းအရာတွေနဲ့ကြတော့အရန်အလန့်ဝေးတယ်ပေါ့နော်အခြားဒီ urban မှာရှိတဲ့လူငယ်တွေနဲ့ရှင်နေဆိုလို့ရှင်ပေါ့နော်ဟိုပုံမှန် Gmail account လောက်တာကအစားပေါ့နော်ဟိုအရန်ဟိုကွာခြားလွန်းတာဖြစ်တဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်မလို့ပေါ့နော်ဒီနေ့ webinar ကနေပြီးတော့မှအများကြီးဟို idea ရောအကြံဉာဏ်တွေရောရလိုက်ပါတယ်လို့ဟုတ်ပြီးတော့ဒီလိုမျိုးဟို COP ရလုပ်တဲ့ခေါင်းစဉ်တွေကလည်းပဲဟိုစိတ်ဝင်စားဖို့ကောင်းတယ်ပြီးတော့အသုံးလဲဝင်ပါတယ်လို့ကျေးဇူးတင်ပါတယ်အဓိကတော့ကျေးဇူးတင်ချင်တာပါဟုတ်
Thank you Rose ကျေးဇူးတင်ပါတယ် Rose ပြောသွားတဲ့အတိုင်းပဲကျမတို့ရဲ့ displaced လူငယ်တွေဟာဆိုရင်တယောက်နဲ့တယောက်ရောက်နေတဲ့ displaced တင်တူပေမဲ့သူတို့လာတဲ့ background တွေမတူဘူးလိုအပ်ချက်တွေမတူဘူးအဲ့ဒီအတွက်ကျမပြောခဲ့တဲ့ presentation slide မှာပြထားတဲ့အတိုင်းပ ပြင်ကျမတို့လိုဆရာဆရာမတွေ educator တွေဟာ we have to meet them where they are ပါသူတို့လိုအပ်နေတဲ့အရာတွေကိုဖြည့်ဆည်းပေး support လုပ်ပေးပြီးသူတို့အောင်မြင်မှုလုပ်ပေးရမှာပါသူတို့မပေးနိုင်တဲ့ outside of their control ဖြစ်နေတဲ့ factor တွေကိုကျမတို့ကအတင်းကျောင်းသားကျောင်းသူတွေအင်တာနက်မှန်မှအတန်းရမယ်ကျောင်းသားကျောင်းသူတွေ Gmail ဖွင့်တတ်မှအတန်းကိုလာ join ရမယ်ကျောင်းသားကျောင်းသူတွေပတ်စံပေးနိုင်မှအတန်းကိုလာ join ရမယ်အဲ့လိုမျိုး barrier တွေကို educator တွေကစပြီးတော့အရန် push မလုပ်ဖို့လိုအပ်ပါတယ်ကျေးဇူးတင်ပါတယ် Thank you everyone for your participation today. I think we are a little bit over time, so I will just hand over the floor to Tuta for wrapping up this session.